Okay, as a little side video on the Sharp VC381, I've got this actual corded remote for it. So these things came with, I think they were around a couple of meters long lead on them. This one's actually had the end cut off, but they used to have, I think it was a 3.5mm plug on these, and the Nationals I think used the 2.5mm. They made a simple wired remote as well for I think the MV300s and that sort of era. So we'll have a look at this. Basically all that used to really go wrong with these was the actual cable, because it got pulled and moved around a lot. It would either break at the remote end or at the plug end, which was quite a common thing in the early 90s. People were still, through the 80s and early 90s, people were still getting these things fixed. But after about the mid 90s, you're pretty rare to even see one of these in existence at all. A lot of people were upgrading their machines by then to newer ones with infrared remote. So I didn't see too many of these for repair then. This one's actually been pretty badly scratched and yeah, not in the best condition. We'll have a look inside. Basically all that's in them is a few resistors. It just switches different resistances into the circuit. Basically each time you press a different button, and that, I guess the microprocessor decodes that into different functions. And there's a little screw there, it's so rusted I can't even see it. It looks like the circuit board. Oh, those buttons are falling apart. I think that's just how they were. And so yes, just a few little switches in here, little momentary, like little mini micro switches they actually are, rather than normal push button ones you'd expect in a remote. And we've got a little slide switch. But I mean, this is early 80s technology. So we've got a 5.6k, 3.3k, 1k and another 5.6k resistor. So I think this, you can see the sort of, the lead comes in. Actually it looks like the lead actually goes through the pause switch. So maybe that goes open circuit when you put it in pause, or short circuit. It's not short circuit, so yeah, it might actually be an open circuit. I think these did have a, I think that's what they used to do actually when they failed and the lead was broken. They used to put the machine into pause. That's how they, and then you'd unplug it from the machine and the functions would all work again. So I think that's how you knew one of these remotes was actually faulty. Though we didn't normally necessarily have a machine to plug them in, we just tested them with a multimeter. But I think yeah, from the customer's point of view, that's what they used to cause. And then it looks like when that switch, I'll soon find out if that's on or off I guess. But it must be because it's not shorting the cable out. Yeah, so it's on in normal, because I think pause is up. Yeah, pause on is up. So actually open circuit for pause, so that's a simple one. So if the lead breaks, you're stuck in pause. And then we've got these other switches here. It's interesting, is it actually, sure it's not normally closed, it could be I guess. Yeah, they're normally closed. Maybe that's why they use little micro switches, because normal push button switches close when you press on them. Interesting. So let's have a look across the actual cable here. Wrap that around the multimeter probe. So maybe that's actually shorted out. Volts on ohms. So it's actually 1.5 ohms. So if we go to pause, we've got nothing. Open circuit. So it's actually 1.6 ohms. So maybe one of these shorts out. So maybe the shorted. So open is pause, shorted is just no function pressed by the look of it. So these actually just in there, when they're not pressed, they actually short the thing out, so it must bypass all resistances. That one gives us 5.6k, which is one of those resistors, green, blue, red there. That's 1.5k, we've got a 1k, 3.3, so I might be putting some of these in parallel or whatever, 600 ohms. So that might be the 1k with one of these others across it. And 2.8k, which would be about half of 5.6, wouldn't it? that could be both of them in parallel or something. That's a little bit off, but yeah, no, that's, so I reckon we've got two of them in, one of them shorts them in a parallel. One's just one of those 5.6, one is a 1.5, so not sure, that might be the 1K with something else on it. Anyway, I'm going to have to go and chase that curl one off the roof. Yeah, so it's just a various combination of resistances. So short circuit means, it's odd to have it short. You think open would be, a normal remote would be no function. The resistance needs to be changing a little bit there, so the lead may be a bit, oh, it's come off my lead, my multimeter lead there. But yeah, it just switches resistances in, and I guess the microprocessor, or maybe there's an interface chip or something, is programmed or designed to tell the difference between those, and that basically sets which mode we got. This one's actually a few modes for, some of these just had pause, I think, and maybe play, stop and pause or something. This is, well, they're worn out now, you can't see. I'm pretty sure the green was play, blue was stop. Then you got fast forward, rewind if you're in stop, or vision search if you leave it in play. So that's, you know, that's 6 functions there plus pause. So it's a 7-function remote really. Doesn't turn the machine on or off, doesn't change channels, anything like that. But you know, we only had a couple of channels here back in the day. These things came out anyway, so that wasn't a big deal. But yeah, all you'd normally have to do with these is replace the cable on them. It was about the only repair job I remember actually ever doing to them. Oops. Don't think I ever had to replace switches or anything in these. They're pretty solidly made ones, so they're pretty unlikely to ever fail. Now, where's that screw hole gone? I'm in the wrong spot here somewhere. Oh, I've got to go through that bit there. Oh, that's it. That's our little cable sort of clamp assembly to stop it getting ripped out easily. And then these buttons have to come through the hole there in the middle of the board. That's it. Bit fiddly. Now where did I put that little screw is the next question. It was right here. And of course, like usual, it's disappeared. That's handy. So, it doesn't seem to matter where you put them. How the hell did that vanish? It's not stuck to one of these things, is it? Okay, found the screw, something that I've got right across the bench there. Right, now we've got a cocky on the loose. So pull that little screw back in, but normally you just pull this board off, resolder a new cable, and you could actually buy them pre-made. And it was just easier to replace the whole thing. They're only a couple of dollars, I think, to buy or something. But what you could do is, often you wouldn't know which end was failed, but you could actually like cut 5 centimeters, 50 mil off this end, re-terminate it, see if that fixed it. Or if you just cut it off, you can measure it anyway to the plug. And if not, you'd cut about the plug off the other end, which was moulded on, and then put an aftermarket plug on. But yeah, not a very well featured remote by modern standards, but these were once a reasonably common thing just because they were nice and cheap. Much cheaper than putting a whole infrared receiver in. I think some of those, like the Sony SLC5, 6, no, it's not the 6, the 7s I think, 5 and 7, one of those machines you actually could buy a whole, it was a great big module that you stuck on, probably about, the front of it was about as big as this remote I think, and went back. And you can actually stick it on the side of the machine, probably cost you another $100 or something, just for the module even, knowing what it was like in those days, and then the remote itself. And then yeah, later machines, obviously, as the price of electronic parts came down, they all went to infrared remotes. I get a feeling, oh, the Akai's had like a little module on the front, but I don't think it was actually an optional thing, but for some reason they had this great big plug-in module on the front of the VS2, 3, 4, that sort of series videos. But I'm not sure that you could actually buy them without the infrared remote. but obviously that made this sort of technology obsolete. These were just a bit of a pain because you had the, of course, the cord. If you're sitting on your couch or something, you had to have the cord running across the floor somewhere. And of course, yeah, again, they'd get caught around people's feet and you trip them up, and that would cause, you know, could pull on the end of them and cause damage, and a lot of moving them back and forwards and the like. So not the world's most convenient thing ever, but some of the early TVs, black and whites, used to have corded remotes, and you could actually press a button and it would clunk, actually have a motor to clunk the old channel tuner around, the old turret tuner. And I think some of them had like motorised volume up down, motorised pots or something. But anyway, a bit of interesting old tech that you don't see around anymore. This one's in terrible condition. Looks like it's been slid up and down the floor quite a bit. Don't know what on earth happened to this, but it's been scratched about all over the place. I guess a new coat of paint would just about fix that. I thought it'd be interesting. I might actually put a plug on this and just hook it into the actual machine. And actually, that's an interesting point. I'm just thinking, if going open circuit actually puts it into pause, then unplugging it from the machine should put it into pause. So I assume they've got one of those sockets with a little switch in it. But they never used to switch. I don't think they switched. That could be interesting to have a look at, actually, because I don't think they used to switch. They used to switch one of the contacts. They had 3 pins in them. Usually the central pin just went straight through, and the other had a switch in it, so that when the plug went in, it would. I wonder if that. Oh, so maybe if that's kept as a short circuit, yeah, maybe you could do it with just a normal 3-pin, 3.5mm socket with a switch in it. And when you unplug this remote, yeah, because this is normally in short circuit mode, it would just short 2 things together inside the machine. Possibly you could you wire it to actually short out the other pin on this, because it would have to short out the 2 pins, I would think, so possibly. Just something I've never seen, because normally you'd have voltage and stuff going in and you wouldn't want to short them out, so maybe that's what they did. They actually had it to short out. And yeah, I'll have to have a look. There is another old machine here. I might pull that apart on it and have a look. And possibly pushing the plug in made it go open circuit in that little switch, and this short circuit inside this thing, whichever one of these switches shorts it out, or maybe multiple of them do. That was enough to mimic the socket being shorted. And then yeah, when you put it in pause, that was an open, and all these other modes removed the short and put in some sort of resistance. So yeah, that's an interesting point. That's why normally these things would, the open circuit would be the default state, because the machine, you've got the remote unplugged and the machine just operates normally. So it is a bit of an interesting thing, and it's kind of the least likely to go faulty. If you've just got an open circuit, you can't really get much more simple than that. But it looks like these had a short, and they must have used the sockets to actually short the 2 pins together, which of course you'd never see in a power circuit. Normally that switch was used so that when a power adapter was plugged in, it disconnected the batteries in your ghetto blaster or something. That was the idea of it. Or of course, when they were used for audio, if you plugged in an earphone or headphones, the switch was designed to disconnect the speakers so that everything went quiet while you had your headphones in and you weren't annoying the family or whatever. So yeah, it's an interesting different use of one of those sockets. I'll have to have a look at that. Shame I don't have a manual for one of these anymore. I could just look it up in the circuit, but yeah, well, we'll look into that and see how it goes. Okay, I've got back onto this Sharp VCR wired remote, and I've just put a plug on it, and I found that sometimes it's measuring around 600 ohms, other times it's only about 20 ohms, but if I move this end around here, it's sort of varying a bit, and it seems to be the tip or the center white wire that's doing it. It's going up all over the place depending on where I put it. Sometimes down a 0 ohms as you'd expect, or half an ohm or whatever, and other times the multimeter's bouncing all over the place. The shield part seems to be okay, which is usually the case. The other conductors rarely break. That's 0.01 ohms. So I think we've got another fault at that end. I've also got the socket out of a machine here, so I can have a look at that. But it does seem to be a short circuit until something's plugged into it. So it looks like I'm going to have to take this little screw out again. And I'll just do the normal trick. You can just slide this little piece along and you get maybe 50 to 100 millimeters, snip it off. What do we need about that so much? They always seem to break at the ends where they flex the most and where they're kind of attached, so if someone yanks on it or whatever, trips over it or something, it's always going to break where it's actually sort of mounted, so it's going to pull against the whatever anchors it. Very unlikely to snap randomly in the middle, though probably not impossible. If I'm yet to see a cord that wasn't broken at one end or the other. I think I might have had a extension cord or something once, like a 240 volt one that was actually somewhere in the middle. There was an actual break in the wire and I did sort of cut it all up. Didn't end up with much cable left. But other than that, normally these audio ones always fail. Well, this isn't technically an audio cable, but it's used for a remote. These sort of shielded cables always seem to fail on the center conductor. So the white was on the outer. And somewhere at one of the ends within 100 mils of the end, usually probably a lot closer, but I think because that whole area gets a fair bit of flexing, if you can spare 50 to 100 mil, then you might as well get rid of it, because that whole end's going to have had a lot of flexing about, and chances are it's going to go again somewhere in that area if you don't just chop the whole lot off back into a sort of fresher, less flexed cable. I left that bit on there, didn't I? Yeah. That little thing can come back. Now I've got some funny thing with these buttons where they've got to sit in the right spot. And that bit must go there. Try and get this blue and green bit in the right spots. And that's got to go back around there like that. Something like that. Probably got a little bit too much cable there. Put that little screw back in. At least that didn't shoot off across the room this time. Oops, that's not. Oh, well, I'll put it back together, I guess is why that's not sitting in the best spot, but that's now come off the switch. Just make sure that's on the switch bit. Put that cable through a little loop thing so that it's sort of held in place. And back cover. Once that's screwed together, everything should hold together well. And that screwdriver will do, I guess. I guess I should have checked it again, but would have been the smart thing before I put it all back together, but that should fix it. You never know, there could be another break in this cable. It does have a bit of damage on the side of it somewhere. Now we've got 2.5 ohms to the remote, and it's moving a slight amount, but not going everywhere like it was before. That could just be my not holding these probes 100%. Does look like there's a slight change of resistance somewhere, so normally you would just change the whole cord rather than messing around with the old one. Again, for the same reason, because it's had a bit of use. It's bound to have other weak spots in it. And you used to be able to just buy these pre-made, which made life a lot easier. 2.7, 1.5, 600 ohm, 5.5, and open. So chuck that bit of wire away. So it's, for my purposes, it's good enough, close enough to fix. So I've got this remote socket on the back of the VCR. RC jack. And yeah, that's shorted together when the remote's out. I reckon they've actually used the switch section of the jack maybe. So if we plug that in, we should still be basically 0 ohms, or close enough. Oh, did I turn that off? Yes, I did. Yeah, it's gone weird. Yeah, well, that's handy. So maybe this jack's not the best, because the remote's definitely, I don't think these are a different type. I'm sure they were just a standard mono 3.5. Yeah, we've now got 34 ohms, which is a bit odd. But like I say, maybe that, I do get a feeling that pause switch was acting a bit. Yeah, that's probably where the resistance is coming from. This was in terrible conditions it was stored in. So it's not surprising the resistance is a bit dicky in the switches. I guess I should have... Oh, this socket's gone open circuit now even without the... Yeah, this was in terrible condition too. This machine completely corroded. So I don't think this is going to be the best test. Oh, now we're down... Maybe put a bit of switch cleaner lubricant in there, because God knows when it last time I actually had a remote plugged into it, if ever. Some people didn't even bother using these remotes even when the machines were new. Now we're getting there. At least we're down in the low ohm sort of range. If I press that, it should go open circuit. If I take that out, it should go closed circuit. Ugh, it's not shutting now. Well, so much for that demo. But anyway, it looks like this was originally meant to be closed. And it just goes to this RA connector, pin 5. And the rest of it looks like it's ground, basically. So it's normally shorted to ground by the look of it. I think that can probably be tossed in the rubbish as well, since it's all corroded. I will try it with the actual machine and see if it does operate, and it should in theory. Let's see if this machine's going to run without dew or anything. It looks like it. Okay, I'll just hold this up for the video, and if we press that, you can see the little play light come on. That's the green button on this thing. Hold that somewhere else. That's stop. Looks like this is rewind, fast forward, end. Video search, yeah, we've got fast forward, stop, rewind. You can see that on the counter. And yeah, you can see the pause light going when I flick that switch. And we should be able to vision search, which you can see the counter's going now. Oh, press stop, I should hit play, shouldn't I? Vision search, rewind, the counter's going backwards. So yeah, that works perfectly well, even though it looks absolutely horrible. So that's all the functions we have. Rewind, fast forward, vision search. Yeah, so fast forward, there it is, it's finally got there. Bound to be a bit dicky, these old switches. Vision search, fast and forward and rewind, so handy if you wanted to zoom through an advert. Good if you got to the end of the tape, you could just hit rewind, although these, if you just let them play to the end, normally automatically go into rewind. And yeah, you could just play it and stop it if you wanted to stop for a coffee break or something. And of course pause it. Not that you ever really use pause, they weren't very visible on the pause. Not a real lot of use to pause, but it was occasionally handy. And so that's it, so that all goes. So it is basically a short circuit. Yeah, there's a bit of damage to the cable there, that could be part of the problem, and a bit of corrosion in there by the look of it, but normally a short circuit. And if the cord fails, it goes open like when you're in pause mode. So of course the machine will just go into pause. I think if we can hit play. Let's just stop that again. So if I've got the remote into pause mode, or we've got a faulty remote, we press play and you can see the pause light comes on straight away. So it's just going to sit there and pause. And if I unplug this remote from the back, pause light's gone out, and we now can see the counter running. So that's what used to happen with these when the cord failed. They'd usually go open, pretty much have to go open, and that would cause the machine to go into pause with the remote in. And if people unplug the remote, they'd realise that it was the remote causing it. But yeah, it's a shame it's not in better condition, but I guess it's better than nothing. You'd be lucky to find one of these days. But there'll be a few still out there, no doubt, in people's boxes of cords and stuff. I thought it was interesting to have a look at one of these and how they work. since it's such an old system that you don't see anymore. Anyway, thanks for watching.